and then we have other people too who want to ask questions. And I request everybody ask whatever question you have for Sam, but just let's use the right words, right? I mean, when I say right words, no swearing, please. It's a request.
Sure. So yeah, I have a couple questions. Read the margin accounts. I mean, there's sort of all this talk about the terms of service. Did you break terms of service? Did you not? You're basically claiming that there was this separate side of your terms of service, which said that if people had margin accounts, you could use kind of their funds, or there was looser language around that. But I talked to somebody from Alameda and asked how big the position of like, or how many people had assets in the type of accounts that that terms of service would apply to versus the regular terms of service, which said you couldn't use their money. And they said it was about $1 billion that was in the margin trading or the margin like side of things where you could reuse their funds or whatever. And there was the rest of it was not there. So does that mean the rest of the money was stolen? I mean, like, it seems like you're putting all your eggs behind this one excuse about, there was this separate side of the terms of service. How do you address everyone else?
So I don't have all the data in front of me. My memory is that it was substantially more than $1 billion in the margin trading program. But I don't have that data in front of me right now, so I can't verify that. On top of that, there were other effects as well. And I don't have the data about all the details of those in front of me, but my understanding is that, some of those were, early wire transfers sent directly to Alameda, which I think contributed to the position as well. And then there are open futures positions on top of that, on top of the spot margin positions, where there can be effectively socialized, losses clawbacks if, one is unable to be closed in time. And so I think it was a combination of those factors. There may have been other factors too, but that's what I've been, able to piece together. And that, putting those together, I think is likely how you got to most of this, but again,
here's the thing: how do you account for maybe the difference in what people are hearing from insiders who are not being accused of fraud and you who sort of is? There's a very different sort of story going on here, where you're saying like, oh, there's this big position that we didn't know about. Because you told me that the last time we spoke in a space, and I went and followed up and I said, hey, is this true? Could it be that this number just wasn't known about? And some Alameda insiders said, no way. You could see on dashboards really simply where it was. And FTX dashboards, not Alameda dashboards that you yourself had access to. So my question is sort of like, it seems like when I go to Alameda insiders or FTX insiders, they're saying this story makes no sense. But when I go to you, who sort of has every incentive to sort of lie and obfuscate, because obviously the incentive here is, well, otherwise you might go to jail, which obviously would be a very bad thing for you. It seems like all of a sudden all the excuses come out, and then when we follow up on them, they don't seem to be true. So I don't know, like, help me square this, because, it'd be nice if you were telling the truth, but everything we're hearing from insiders is that you're not.
I don't know what to tell you. I'm saying what I believe. I don't know which insiders you're talking about. I don't know exactly what they said. It doesn't line up with my beliefs, but I can't speak to what they think or what they said.
But why are multiple people within your company at less senior roles knowing more about the company than you?
And Alameda was not a company that was running at the time, but I hear you. I'm sorry. I don't know exactly what you're referring to. I don't know who you're talking about. I don't know what they said. I don't.
Well, I'm telling you some of what they said. I mean, for example, one of them was that there was like that backdoor system or whatever. A, that you knew it existed, and B, that it was easy to see the balance or the position of Alameda very simply on FTX dashboards, because they had a margin trading account with you guys, so you guys could have seen it.
But
you guys could see the margin positions of everybody, no?
But a lot of the position did not appear in that main account.
So where was the position?
It was in a separate stub account, I believe, related to wire transfers that had been sent, to Alameda Research, generally primarily to FTX, having its own bank accounts.
So who controlled the secret stub account? Did anyone at Alameda know about this secret stub account? I mean, are we supposed to believe that just like there was this stub account that nobody knew about?
I don't know who knew about what when. I'm sorry.
I mean, clearly somebody lost the money, right? Like, obviously the money went somewhere. Somebody lost it. It just seems really convenient that $8 billion was located in this like account that didn't show up when you pulled up Alameda's balances, right?
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, so a separate question is obviously around this Forbes thing, because you've said you don't have present knowledge of sort of like Alameda's balances, and they came out and said that you were giving them up to date balances from Alameda. How do you square that? Just as of a month ago, you knew Alameda's position. How does that square with your statement about like you don't know what's going on?
I haven't seen the thing that you're referring to, but I was able to give very rough approximations that included a subset of the list of assets that Alameda had. Um, I by asking about the assets I believe to be the largest sets of them. I was not giving full accountings of all of Alameda's balances or positions, because I didn't generally have those, and because it was a complicated process dependent on liquidity of tokens and things like that from the Ford's perspective. So I was just sending them a sort of abbreviated partial list of Alameda assets periodically.
But that means you knew that what Alameda had, even roughly, you knew what Alameda had.
I had a rough sense of what their assets are. That is correct. By rough, I do mean to within $10 billion or so. I did not have a fine-grained sense of what their total asset value was, and I did not have a fine-grained sense of their liabilities or of their margin position size or how that was split up.
I guess one of my questions is like, what do you think should be done if we find out that you're lying about all of this? Like, sort of, because it's kind of one thing to steal people's money, it's another thing to lie about it. What do you think should be done? Like, because I mean, it's going to be obviously a lot of this is going to eventually get litigated. Eventually Caroline Ellison's going to have to take the stand. What happens if she pulls out text messages that shows you knew about it? I mean, do you think that wipes away your credibility?
I mean, I think a lot of my credibility has already been wiped away, frankly. And
I think that's fair.
Honestly, that's not what I'm thinking about right now. I'm not trying to focus on, my, like, I'm just thinking about, like, customers or who I think are what matter.
So you're saying there's a chance for them to get money back or for us to get our money back?
I don't want to speak out of turn, and I can't make promises on behalf of the company. I can't speak on behalf of the company. And I don't know what decisions everyone's going to make. I do know that FTX US, to my knowledge, is totally solvent and could, I think, return everyone's money tomorrow if it wanted to. And I think internationally, there are a lot of pathways, potentially forward there that one could imagine FTX International taking. I think, I know that as of before I filed, there were billions of dollars of like serious funding offers potentially on the table, and I would expect and hope that those are being deeply.
Who are those funding offers?
I don't know that I have authority to say.
Well, you said you had $4 billion that came in, right?
Yep.
Does that still exist? Was that ever real?
I think it. I mean, I think it. I don't know for sure, but I think that some of those might. It. My guess is that some of them might. That and I hope that the sort of relevant teams are doing whatever they can to maximize value for customers here.
Yeah, it just kind of doesn't make a lot of sense why someone would pour $4 billion when you guys have liabilities sort of as high as you do. Um, can you talk a bit about the mark to market like statements you were making around solvency? You're making some pretty outrageous statements about like FTX, had the money when a lot of it was Serum, FTT, these tokens that you can't sell in those amounts, and that would completely crash the price. They can't support that kind of selling. Were you kind of deliberately misleading people there?
So what I can say is I was just thinking about them in terms of, well, their mark price was just whatever their market price was at the time, and obviously I was cognizant of the fact that um uh that you can't the market price isn't necessarily, I mean, is never what you could sell a large amount of something for, but I also massively misjudged that discrepancy there. And um
What do you mean you massively misjudged it? Because you knew sort of roughly the percentage of Serum and FTT you held, and you knew the trading volume. I mean, you are a smart guy. You're a professional trader. There's no way you make a simple mistake like that, right? Like, how's that even possible?
I mean, it was a pretty big misjudgment and mistake that I made, um, and a pretty embarrassing one. But I was thinking of it internally in the context of standard market environment, and obviously that still means substantial impact. But it's a different scale than what you would see, than what we did see in the market crash that happened, where um, without selling, without liquidating the position, there was a much larger than 50% market crash in a few day period, with very little bid side liquidity, and it, that obviously history has said again and again that those events are possible, those very correlated market crashes, and not just very correlated
But
market crashes in those instruments, but ones where hedges don't end up working fully or even
right,
much
but
at
we
all.
don't even need to have this market crash for the statement about mark to market accounting making no sense, right? And you just said that yourself. Even with standard movements, right? If you tried to sell the amount of Serum or FTT that you had on the books, you wouldn't have gotten half. You wouldn't have gotten a quarter of what you put on your books to investors. And so the question is like, we know that you're not. The problem is like every time it comes to this hard point, the answer seems to always be, I made an embarrassing mistake. But at what point are you going to say like, no, I'm a smart guy, right? You were at the highest levels of this entire industry. You were the guy to go to, the smartest guy in the room, right? It's hard to believe that you made this many embarrassing mistakes. One embarrassing mistake, I get it. But everything's an embarrassing mistake. At least tell us that you knew that the mark to market made no sense.
And the way that I was thinking about risk at score was starting with mark to market and then adjusting down effectively from that. Um, and uh, and obviously that means that there should be a real buffer because of exactly what you're saying. That buffer should have been a lot larger than I was thinking
But
of.
but you never went down from risk from there. And you said publicly, you said FTX is solvent. Other views may differ. Well, there is no other view on it. There's the fact of how markets work, and you were making public misleading statements. It wasn't one time you did this. You continued to make misleading statements about it after people had given you pushback.
Sorry,
So
which times are you talking about here?
I think it was in one of your follow-ups about the what happened. You said something about other views may differ.
Oh, that was FTX US, was it not?